And the Sun Belt, it looks to be expanding and adding some new members into the fold. And we're going to talk about that because it's definitely something we discussed a while back with our good friend Scott Watkins, part of Sun Belt Pages. He's on the 103.7 The Game hotline right now. But it's something we talked about, and maybe he had a little bit more information than I did, because I was blown away when I saw James Madison University being one of those teams that's getting that invite to join the Sun Belt. And he was the one, he came on about a month or so ago and mentioned that exact team as being one the Sun Belt Conference was absolutely looking to get. And now we go to the 103.7 The Game hotline and talk with our guy, part of Sun Belt Pages, Scott Watkins. Scott, how you doing, man?
Doing good, Clint. How you doing?
I'm doing pretty darn good, man. It's definitely a great time to be a fan of the Sun Belt Conference because now it looks like this thing is getting that much bigger with a lot of different teams joining in. And this comes right after the AAC officially announced several of other teams in the Conference USA jumping ship over there. Reportedly, you're going to have Southern Miss, Old Dominion, James Madison, and Marshall all accepting invites to the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, I haven't seen any news this morning, so I don't know what's up with the other three. So all I know is that Southern Miss for sure is coming in, and I had that confirmed on my end last night. So that for sure is happening, and if Southern Miss is coming, no doubt that the other three are coming. It's just a matter of time, a matter of red tape. I know with James Madison, there's some state legislature involved there for whatever reason, but that's just extra tape to cut through that will be cut through. But, yeah, 4 teams coming in and another 3 leaving Conference USA.
All right, before we get to the future of the Sun Belt Conference with this, let's go to Conference USA with the 2 programs, 3 programs, excuse me, Marshall, Old Dominion, and Southern Miss. Once they do just make that accepting of the invite, all that stuff goes down. What does this mean for the Conference USA? Because you wound up losing 6 more members earlier in the week with Charlotte, FAU, North Texas, Rice, UAB, and UTSA, because it looks like they're in dire straits right now.
Yeah, so they've got 5 schools left, including Louisiana Tech. And it seems like what they're going to try to do is maybe do what the Sun Belt did, years ago, but do it a lot faster because the conference is about out of teams. They need at least one team by 2023 come in to continue to compete as a conference or continue to get the auto bid to, the big dance and all that stuff. They need one more team. So what they might do is they might go and get some football-only members and then bring up some FCS schools like McNeese State. They might go get Sam Houston State. That'd be the biggest ticket they could find, I think. And Liberty already said no, so they've got to act quick if they want to recover.
Oh, no, exactly. They got to add really quick because, and you bring up the fact they're going towards teams like a McNeese. I'm surprised they haven't gone towards Nicholls State as well because Nicholls, I think, has a lot bigger of a base. Now, mind you, I think McNeese, it's going to help them a lot more in some of the other sports, not as much the money gainers, because I think football, it's going to be a process for them to kind of transition over. But I think in baseball, they'd be able to compete. Basketball, they'd be able to compete a little bit more. Same with Sam Houston State. But it was interesting to see those names more than anything. Basically, the I hate to kind of say it this way, but the land of misfit toys that is the Southland Conference after you see a lot of other teams jump ship over. Do you think they'll jump over, or could they just go ahead and follow a lot of the other teams that moved in the FCS ranks to the WAC and wait for the WAC to just basically move up into a G5 conference?
That was something that I was talking about with some friends yesterday. There's a lot of craziness that can go down. Whatever Conference USA does, I think that other conferences are going to be reactionary. I don't think that the WAC or the ASUN or the Southland, all they can do is gather up the troops, have a meeting, say, hey, this is why we want you to stay. But other than that, they're going to have to be reactionary to what Conference USA is going to do. I was surprised, just as surprised as you to hear McNeese State and to hear Tarleton State, which is a school nobody had heard of before last year because they just jumped from D2 to D1. And now Conference USA is talking to them about moving to FBS. I think everything's going to be reactionary. I think that it's going to throw a big old wrench into a lot of processes because, the WAC, of course, it has a long-term plan. They're coming back to football, and they want to be back to FBS at the end of the decade. The ASUN is throwing together a football conference. So there's a lot of moving pieces that Conference USA can disrupt right now. And I think that those FCS conferences, all they can do is wait and see.
Talk right now with Scott Watkins, part of Sunbelt Pages. And obviously, we'll flip it over to the Sunbelt now and see how things look. And just based off of what I'm thinking about when it comes to the future of what the Fun Belt could look like, it looks like more likely than not, obviously, you're based in Alabama and you cover the Troy Trojans a lot over in Montgomery, Alabama. I think, honestly, that team's going to be jumping over to the West and make that like that much stronger of a conference based off of the geographic outlook.
Yes, Troy is going to go to the West Division once it's all said and done. That'll start in 2023. That will make the West Division much stronger. I think the East is going to be ridiculous. Don't get me wrong, with Marshall in there and James Madison in the mix as well. But the West is going to be a lot better with Troy and Southern Miss involved. And that'll be fun. I think travel-wise, it'll be a little bit tougher on Troy because you're not playing, 8 out of 9 other opponents. You're going to be playing everybody out west and maybe 2 schools out east. And then we're going to have the introduction of cross-division rivals, which I think Troy and South Alabama is the only protected cross-division rival that the Sun Belt has right now. Everybody's going to get one in 2 years. I'm hoping that Troy gets Georgia State because that's a 3-hour trip. But that's something that's going to happen. But as far as just how the division's going to look, the West, like you said, it's going to look a lot better.
It's going to look a lot better, and I think it's just going to be so much more fun. You bring up the East, that thing's going to be stacked from top to bottom because you got App State, who's never going to have a truly down year in terms of, they're going to be 500 or so in the conference. Coastal Carolina, Marshall, James Madison, like you mentioned, who's to say Georgia State or Georgia Southern could have a really good year. That East is going to be very tough to navigate. Now, the West, obviously, if Arkansas State can kind of build momentum with Butch Jones leading the way over there, and then also maybe Troy gets back to some form of normalcy and Southern Miss managed to get that ball rolling. I think the Sun Belt Conference is in really good shape right now, and it seems like, based off of what the AAC did, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they seem to be the new premier conference once all this kind of stuff shakes out.
It could be. It could be. A lot of it depends on, what the landscape as far as how these teams look in 2 years. Of course, right now, the Sun Belt is great up top. The top tier is fantastic. The league is having a little bit of a rebuild year on the bottom level. I think there's 5 or 6 teams, I think actually 6 teams that you could say are rebuilding at some phase. That will change. I mean, there's going to be some teams in 2 years that are going to look good. Southern Miss under Will Hall might look pretty good, and that will help out west. Texas State, they might be making a change. They might be looking different in a couple of years. Troy might be looking different in a couple of years. I mean, it really all depends. The American, you got 6 Conference USA schools now over there that have saturated that league, and they went after the markets again, like Conference USA did a long time ago. Questionable, bold move. But, we'll see how it plays out. It did not play out well last time for Conference USA. Maybe for the American it'll work out this time, but who knows?
Exactly. Who really knows? Talking right now with Scott Watkins, Sunbelt Pages. And, when you look at the way things are, and by the way, I got to say, thank you for reminding me about Will Hall, former Cajuns offensive coordinator, now the head coach at Southern Miss. It's crazy to think how the circle kind of goes in that perspective. But when you think about it, obviously it feels like Conference USA, if they can't necessarily retain some of these names, and it feels like it's not going to be the case, could you see this thing be split up? Whoever's left just kind of is basically allowed to opt out of being part of Conference USA, and this thing breaks apart, and we see the number of FBS conferences go from 10 to 9, and we see what's left kind of spread apart amongst the AAC and the Sun Belt.
That's possible. I don't think it's the most likely thing that's going to happen. I don't think it's the most likely option. I've heard a little bit of talk about the MAC, picking up a couple of schools if that were to happen. But I think Conference USA is very determined to go ahead and expand as quickly as possible. It may not look pretty early on, but I think that's what they're going to do. And I think they're going to try to hang tight. They're going to hang in there for a few years and try to get the ball rolling. It's exactly what happened. So 9 left 5 members and had to rebuild from there pretty quickly. Brought up a lot of FCS schools. The difference is the last go around there were several FCS schools that were storied powers, storied teams. App State, Georgia Southern, even Coastal Carolina was successful in the Big South. But this go around, there's not much left. With James Madison going to the Sun Belt, the FCS powers, they're focused in the upper Midwest. That's where they are. They're all up in North Dakota and Montana and Iowa, that region. There's not much left for Conference USA to pick off. They're going to have to look into the Southwest, and those programs aren't the strongest.
Scott, one more for you. Do you think there's going to be more expansion down the road for the Sun Belt, or do they stick to the 12 teams like for the next 10 years?
Well, this will take them to 14. This will take them to 14 teams. And I think that'll be it. That should be it. I've never been one to like a good 16-team super conference like the SEC is going to. I think that makes your bottom tier a little too deep. I think that sets up a different battle down the road. So I don't think the Sun Belt is going to want to get too big. Of course, looking at Conference USA, that league got up to 14 and it killed them. So it makes me a little nervous that the Sun Belt's going to get that big right now. So I definitely don't want to think they're going to go any bigger than that.
Scott, thank you so much for coming on, my man. We'll talk to you down the road. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, brother.